My dear friends and my dear students, today's topic is Shaheed Aazam Bhagat Singh and his era. Inqilab Zindabad, Inqilab Zindabad. It takes a loud voice to make deep fear. These immortal words were uttered by Shaheed Aazam Bhagat Singh and by Batukeshwar Dutt at the time of exploding bomb in National Assembly. It was the British National Assembly with its matchless patriotism, absolute determination, revolutionary heroism, and the tremendous leadership qualities. Bhagat Singh and his unmistakable potential of growing into the radical pole of the freedom struggle. He and his comrades produced a real challenge to the political supremacy of national hero Mahatma Gandhi and Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru. There were very few attempts to save the lives of Bhagat Singh and his associates. Bhagat Singh was considered to the most famous revolutionary of the independence movement. For the reason he is often referred as a Shaheed Aazam, Shaheed Aazam Bhagat Singh. He is usually referred as a Shaheed Aazam Bhagat Singh. So at such a young age, at the age of only 23 years and a few months, if anyone was smiling just before hanging till death, it was martyr Bhagat Singh, his uncle Sardar Ajit Singh as well as his father were the great freedom fighters. Both were the great freedom fighters. The whole environment of family was an environment of freedom struggle where he has grown up in a most patriotic atmosphere at very early age. And very early age, he was started the dreaming of uprooting the British Empire. At teenage, he was just 13 years old when he dreamt for the uprooting British Empire. Never afraid of fighting during his childhood. He thought of growing guns in the field. There is a very famous story about him that he was growing guns in his field. Then his father asked, "What are you doing, my child?" So he answered, like crops, gun will also grow. Then we will fight. We will make a Gadar. We will make revolutionary struggle against British Empire. Kartar Singh Saraba was his hero. Kartar Singh Saraba was the great martyr of Gadar party. At the age of 19, he was hanged till death by the British rulers. So he was his hero since childhood. The massacre of Jallianwala Bagh on 13th April 1919 drove him to the Amritsar, where he kissed the earth first and sanctified by the martyr's blood. The earth was sanctified by the martyr's blood. So many thousands were killed by General Dyer in a brutal firing in Jallianwala Bagh on 13 April 1919. So he brought a soil of blood from Jallianwala Bagh. At the age of 16, he used to wonder why so many Bharatvasis could not drive away the fistful invaders. Bhagat Singh was born on 27 September 1907 in the village of Banga, which was at Lalpur district of the Punjab province, where then the British Empire is today's Pakistan. Lalpur is nowadays in the Pakistan. It is not in the Hindustan. He was born in the erstwhile Pakistan. So he was the second among the 7 children. 3 of his brothers and 3 of his sisters. The name of Bhagat Singh he was named Bhagat Singh by his grandmother because his uncle Ajit Singh just released from the jail. So she called him a Bhagowala has come to our house now. So since then from Bhagowala the name Bhagat Singh was named. Sardar Kishan Singh was his father, and the Sardar Ajit Singh, both were the freedom fighters. But Ajit Singh was a wonderful freedom fighter. He was close associate of Lala Lajpat Rai. They launched a great agitation against canal colonization bill in year 1907, just when the Bhagat Singh was only 1 year old, 1907. Later Ajit Singh joined the Gadar party, Gadar movement, and he fled from the India because Britishers always jailed him, they tortured him. So Gadar movement started from 1914 to 1915. So he was in Europe in those days. He was a close associate of Lala Hardyal. After being sent to the village school, Bhagat Singh, he was sent to a Banga village school primarily. So for the few years, primary education he has taken from the Banga. Bhagat Singh then enrolled to the Dayanand Anglo-Vedic College, which is in short form, it is called DAV College, Lahore. In 1923, he joined National College. National College was actually founded by Lala Lajpat Rai in the response of Mahatma Gandhi's non-corporation movement call. These were the schools established which were not aided by the British Empire, and there was no British syllabus. British Empire syllabus were taught there. Only national syllabus has been taught in those schools. That is all called National College of Lahore, where he met with his guru Vidyalankar. He had a very great tendencies, his childhood of the revolutionary tendencies. So many associates he found in the National College. One of them was Yashpal, Genda Singh, Pandit Kishori Lal, so on, so many. So Azad, he wanted to meet other revolutionaries. Actually, his marriage was fixed by his father when he was very young, at the age of 19 or 20. So he freed from the house and he went to Kanpur. Chandrasekhar Azad's address was given by his teacher, by his professor Vidyalankar, who was our Samaji leader also. So he went to Kanpur and met Chandrasekhar Azad. It's a big story of his life. He lived a very only short life of 23 years and 6 or 7 months only. So then Azad introduced him to the Ganesh Shankar Vidyarthi. Ganesh Shankar Vidyarthi was a great journalist, he was a patriot, he was a revolutionary, he was a Gandhian, but he had a great sympathy with the revolutionary movement. So class Chandrasekhar Azad was very close to Ganesh Shankar Vidyarthi. So he sent to Ganesh Shankar Vidyarthi and said to him that please train him in journalism, in writing. He is very fond of learning. So he had been with the Ganesh Shankar Vidyarthi and with other revolutionaries like Hasrat Mohani, who was a great poet also and a great revolutionary, who has just introduced a bill for the Poon Swaraj in Baroda, Adhivesan of Congress party, when Ram Prasad Bismil and Ashfaqullah were also attended with him. Hasrat Mohani's resolution was not allowed to pass by Mahatma Gandhi himself because they were asking for the only dominion status for India, not complete freedom. So Hasrat Mohani was a wonderful revolutionary. He was a leftist and a Maulana also. So Bhagat Singh had been very much impressed by Hasrat Mohani, and there was another person, Radha Mohan Gokul ji, who trained him into the thoughts of the socialism. So that was the atmosphere of the Kanpur, which was a highly industrialized city that is called Manchester of the East. So in that atmosphere he was trained for the 1 year. Then he returned back to Lahore after Kanpur. During that period, that Kakori Kand also happened, in which Chandrasekhar Azad took part, and so many revolutionaries were arrested by the British government, and Azad left Kanpur. So he also left Kanpur for the Kanpur. Azad left Kanpur for Jhansi. He lived in Jhansi later on. So it's a wonderful association of Azad and Bhagat Singh, and became a lifelong leadership, lifelong friendship with two great revolutionaries. So police became very much concerned when he returned to Lahore in 1925. So he was arrested in Lahore in the pretext of a bomb explosion, which happened in 1927 in Lahore. But he was released. There was no evidence against Bhagat Singh in this case. So he was released on surety, on the bail by the British government. But he started writing, as I've already told you, that he was trained by Ganesh Shankar Vidyarthi ji for round about 1 year, and he has also learned socialism, communism, Lenin, Marx, socialist thoughts, and the modern thought, history. So he was very fond of books. He just devour the books. He don't read it. Radha Mohan Gokul ji said he always devoured the books. So he also written so many articles published in Kirti, which was published Urdu, Hindi, Punjabi. He was fond of all three languages. He can write fluently in Hindi, he can write fluently in Urdu, he can write fluently in English. So he has written so many articles, and he established Naujawan Bharat Sabha. He was the founder of Naujawan Bharat Sabha along with his other revolutionary comrades. As I have already mentioned, those were the associates of Bhagat Singh in National College, Lahore. So Bhagat Singh also wrote in Kirti. That was a journal of the Workers and the Peasant Party, which was established by the revolutionaries in Punjab revolutionaries. Later on, it was merged with the Communist Party, Workers and the Peasant Party. He had also written so many articles in Veer Arjun. Veer Arjun was a very famous newspaper in those days in Punjab of Mahashay Krishna. Mahashay Krishna was a great Arsamaji leader, and it was a revolutionary paper in those days. So he had written by some fake names also, because he was badly wanted by the police. Even when he came from the Kanpur to Lahore, so he had written by name of Balwan, Ranjit, Vidrohi, so many fake names. These fake names were also used by him in the revolutionary struggle, in the revolutionary life. Few days before going to gallows, Bhagat Singh had said that written the situation of reaction and trap people into its clutches. They hesitate to break the stagnancy. It is much required to generate revolutionary fervor. On February 31, he was hanged on 23rd March 1931. So just few days before his hanging, he has written these wonderful, these golden words by Bhagat Singh. He repeatedly emphasized on working among the ordinary masses. He said himself that I was a terrorist, but I am not a terrorist now. That was his self-criticism. He was a great self-critic person. So Bhagat Singh has a wonderful life. He has led a wonderful life. It's a very, very short life. Bhagat Singh has really potent promise to much more meaningful freedom. Could not have been ours in September 1928. Just remember this date, my student. Just remember this date. It's a very important day in modern history, in the history of the revolutionary movement. And he and his comrades, his associates, along with the Chandrasekhar Azad, from each part of the country, कोई पंजाब से, कोई महाराष्ट्र से, कोई यूपी से है, कोई बंगाल से, तेरी पूजा की थाली में लाए हम फूल हर रंग के आज हर डाल से. नाम कुछ भी सही पर लगन एक है, जोत से जोत दिल की जगह जाएंगे. This was the golden words written by Ram Prasad Bismil. So they established Hindustan Socialist Republican Party. He joined the Hindustan Republican Party founded by Shashindra Sanyal in 1924 in Kanpur. But in 1928, just after 4 years development, he convinced all the revolutionaries with the thought of socialism, which he has learned in Kanpur, as I have already mentioned it. So Hindustan Socialist Republican Association at meeting held ruins in the Firoz Shah Kotla ground, Delhi. In the one action, HRA avenged result of HSRA avenged result on Lala Lajpat Rai. Lala Lajpat Rai was a great leader of Congress party, and he was brutally hit during the Simon Commission protest. He was leading the protest against Simon Commission, but he was brutally hit in a lathi charge by Scott, Senior Superintendent Police Scott, and Assistant Senior Superintendent Police of Lahore Sanders. Then when he was leading the protest march against Simon Commission on 30th October 1928, it was 30th October, and on 17th November 1928, Lalaji died because of these wounds, which has endured during lathi charge. The brutal British officers, the name I have already mentioned. So HSRA, Hindustan Socialist Republican Army, revolutionaries decided to take revenge of Lalaji's brutal murder by British Empire, by British officer. So Sanders was killed. First bullet was fired by Rajguru, and later on 8 bullets were fired by Bhagat Singh. He died on the spot. On that spot, Chanan Singh, the constable who was chasing Bhagat Singh, he was killed by Shaheed Chandrasekhar Azad. He had a wonderful firing skill. So he was just to capture Bhagat Singh, so he was killed. So it's a very, very long and very interesting story of killing of that Sanders and Chanan Singh. Then later on they have dropped a bomb in assembly. Both, as I started this video with that slogan, Inqilab Zindabad, Inqilab Zindabad. When they threw bomb in the Legislative Assembly, that is called National Legislative Assembly of Delhi, established by the British government. So on 8th April 1929, remember the date, 8th April 1929, when Public Safety Bill and Anti-Labour Trade Dispute Bill were being introduced in the National Assembly. The government was beginning with the concession but refused to move the core issue, recognize the classification of political prisoners in the eyes of the official. If someone broke the law, then that was his personal act. It's not a political act. So they were introduced a public safety bill. So Bhagat Singh and Botkeshwar Dutt threw a bomb in assembly, and they offered their arrest voluntarily. They voluntarily said that just arrest us. They did not try to flee from that spot of National Assembly. They would have flown easily, but they have already decided in the HSRA meeting that Bhagat Singh will and Botkeshwar Dutt will offer their arrest because they want to disseminate their socialist ideas, their revolutionary ideas on the platform of the court. So that they have offered their arrest. So then there is a long story when Bhagat Singh did a great and long hunger strike of more than 100 years in which Jatin Nath Das, his close revolutionary associate from Bengal, an expert of making bomb. The bomb which was thrown into the parliament in the National Assembly was made by Jatin Nath Das. He was a professor of the chemistry in Calcutta University. He joined the revolutionary movement at the instance of Chandrasekhar Azad. Chandrasekhar Azad brought him to Agra. They have established so many bomb factories in Saharanpur, in Agra, in other places, in Kanpur also. So he died on 63rd day of hunger strike. So his corpse was taken back to Calcutta by great leader Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose. It's a long story. We are narrating this story for our students of English medium. We have already made a video on Hindi on Bhagat Singh and on his era, the whole era that is called era of Bhagat Singh, era of HSRA, Hindustan Socialist Republican Army era in the modern revolutionary history. So the jail committee recommended unconditional release, but he refused to take bail. He said, until my all comrades are not being released, I will not take bail. Yatendra Nath declined the offer of British government and the officers because he was just, he knows that he is going to die. He is a very frail health, but he refused his release on bail. On 30th September 1929, on 13 September 1929, he died in jail after 63rd day of hunger strike. Almost all his nationalist leaders in country paid tribute to Jatin Nath Das, Mahatma Muhammad Alam, Gopi Chand Bhargav resigned from the Punjab Legislative Assembly in the protest. Congress protested. Even Nehru moved successful adjournment motion in Central Assembly. But he died ultimately because of the inhuman treatment of the Lahore prisoners in Lahore jail. Those were the so many prisoners. Those were arrested. Only Chandrasekhar Azad was not arrested. Otherwise, most of them were arrested. Shiv Verma, Yashpal, Ajay Ghosh, so many, so it's a long list. We are not mentioning all the names here because we are making a very short video on Bhagat Singh and on his era. So Congress party also passed a resolution to end this hunger strike, but they declined to end hunger strike until their demands were not accepted. On 5th October 1929, after 116 days, 116 days hunger strike, the strike was called off. Then British government accepted their demands and they recognized them as a political prisoners. Before them, they were not treated as a political prisoners, but an ordinary criminals of terrorist act. Because British government considered them as a terrorist. They are terrorists, but they are not terrorists. They were the revolutionary freedom fighters. Those sacrificed their life for the nation. They have no personal motto. They have no selfish motto by the revolutionaries. So they have become very popular. On 7th October 1930, the tribunal delivered tribunal which was made on these revolutionary judicial tribunal delivered 300 pages judgment based on all so-called evidence and concluded that participation of Bhagat Singh, Sukhdev and Rajguru in Sanders murder case was proven. They were sentenced to death in that case, in Sanders murder case. In throwing National Assembly bomb, they were sentenced for the life imprisonment. But in Lahore conspiracy case, that is Lahore conspiracy case, second Lahore conspiracy case. First Lahore conspiracy case was launched against Gadar party. Gadar party, in which Kartar Singh Saraba, Vishnu Ganesh Pingle were sentenced to death. And so many 100 revolutionaries were sent to Kalapani, Andaman Nicobar jail. That is called Kanapani. Now here also 3 were sentenced to death. Bhagat Singh, Rajguru and Sukhdev in Sanders murder case. They were sentenced to death by hanging till death. 3. So Kundan Lal received Kundan Lal. That was not captured in Kakori Kand. Remember the name Kundan Lal Gupta. Chandrasekhar Azad and Kundan Lal Gupta were not arrested in Kakori Kand, where Ram Prasad Bismil, Thakur Roshan Singh, Ashfaqullah Khan and Rajendra Lahiri were sentenced to death. And Vishnu Dublish, so many so. Yogesh Chand Chatterjee, Sachinda Sanyal, so many. We have already made a detailed video. You can see that video on Kakori Kand. On Ashfaqullah Khan, we have mentioned all the names. We have made a video on Ashfaqullah Khan. So you can go in detail the names which were sentenced to life imprisonment and of the various sentences on various periods. So Kishori Lal, Mahavir Singh, Vijay Kumar Sinha, Shiv Verma, Gaya Prasad, Jay Dev, Kamal Nath Tiwari were all sentenced to transportation of life. I have mentioned very important names. I have not mentioned all the names, but I have mentioned very, very famous name. Prem Dutt. Prem Dutt received imprisonment of the 5 years. Prem Dutt. There was revolutionary Prem Dutt. Kundan Lal, I have just mentioned already, 7 years imprisonment. Prem Dutt 5 years. And these all, the name I have mentioned, 7 names. Pandit Kishori Lal, Mahavir Singh. Mahavir Singh later on killed in jail by the British police. We will make a separate video on Mahavir Singh. Is a very, very famous name. He was from Itawa. Mahavir Singh, Thakur Mahavir Singh. Kamal Nath Tiwari, Shiv Verma, Gaya Prasad, Dr. Gaya Prasad. Vijay Kumar Sinha. Vijay Kumar Sinha is also very famous revolutionary. Before Bhagat Singh, he was selected to throw bomb in assembly. But on the logic or the instance of Sukhdev, Bhagat Singh was sent to throw bomb in assembly because he can speak very well in English. So Sukhdev argued that if we want to put up our ideas, revolutionary ideas before the nation, then Bhagat Singh should be sent. Because they both are going to offer their arrest voluntarily in National Assembly. Punjab Defence Committee drew a plan to appeal in Privy Council against the judgment of the Judicial Tribunal, which sentenced Bhagat Singh, Rajguru and Sukhdev. Bhagat Singh actually declined to appeal. But anyway, that HSRA, other Congress leaders, so many Congress leaders appealed for the release or just to reduce the sentence if it is possible, but the appeal was rejected. Viceroy was completely empowered to create such a tribunal, but he did not create it. The appeal was dismissed by the Judge Viscount Dundin. His name was Viscount Dunedin, who dismissed the appeal. Life and ideas of Shaheed Bhagat Singh became very much relevant at the age of moral degeneration in all the walks of Indian life. Today, Bhagat Singh is very much relevant. Not only his action, his sacrifice, his great patriotism, as I already mentioned it, but his ideas also. Nowadays, many youths are victims of social and political deviations in this time. They may be inspired by the thought of the Bhagat Singh. There are so many national activities are going on in this country. So many political deviations are taking place. Some of them are heading toward the criminal world, particularly the white-collar crimes to earn more and more money. That is the greed of the more money in capitalism, which was wonderfully opposed by Bhagat Singh. Wonderfully opposed. He proposed for the socialism. Socialism may be alternative, Marxist socialism. Economic equality, social equality, by which might strive to attain overnight justice by revolution. We can attain justice in the economic justice, social justice, political justice, which still we are not having in this country. A very few capitalists having the 75% of the wealth of this nation. It is not the dream. It was not the dream of the revolutionaries. Azadi dream was all will be prosperous, all will be educated. All are not prosperous, only a part of society. Very, a teeny part of society is prosperous. Only 1 or 2% persons are very rich. Rest middle class is also somehow prosperous, but rest of them 100 crores are living still in the below the line of poverty. So the Bhagat Singh idea of socialism, first of all, he has introduced socialism word in a form of political action. The Great Revolutionary Party, Hindustan Republican Army, included the word socialism in its title, Hindustan Socialist Republican Army. That was the party made by Bhagat Singh and Chandrasekhar Azad both. Chandrasekhar Azad was the commander-in-chief of that party after Ramprasad Bismil when he was hanged. So he just organized, we have already made a video on Chandrasekhar Azad, you can go through it in details on this subject. So one day at martyrdom, Bhagat Singh said that he himself had construed the inspiration of the revolution. The great message of Bhagat Singh has left is to be considered with a more serious concern. The thoughts of Bhagat Singh and his comrades are still relevant today because the fact is that he has become an inseparable part of Indian consciousness. Born in the village of near Lahore, Bhagat Singh emerged a hero of the Indian revolutionaries during the freedom struggle itself. Afterwards, so many poems were written about him in Punjabi, in Hindi, in Bhojpuri, in Bengali. He is just a real national hero. Right from Kashmir to Kanyakumari. In every state, so many books have been written on Bhagat Singh. Bhagat Singh is not only remembered as an illustration of unparalleled courage, sacrifice, patriotism, but also for the deep scientific analysis of social and political problems. His relevance is not only that he was a brave, he has sacrificed his life, but also for his scientific analysis. He has written so many articles in different newspapers, which I have mentioned. A few days before going to gallows, Bhagat Singh said that when the reactionary situation just entrapped the people into the clutches, they hesitate for any positive change. Then to break the stagnancy, it is very much necessary to generate revolutionary thoughts. What a wonderful idea. In the last meeting told, ultimately British would go anyway because their roots had been totally shaken by the Indian people, by the revolutionaries, by the Congress movement. In agreement between the Congress and British might can take place by which India would attain semi-freedom. Semi-freedom. Just listen to these words of Bhagat Singh. Instead of white rulers, black may rule in future. That was his sagacity, that was the intelligence, that was the analysis that he had to able to visualize so far the future of India in those days. Before his death, before his hanging, till death, Bhagat Singh and his comrades not only fought bravely with the British Empire, but also against the social backwardness of the India. Hindustan Socialist Republican Association Party of Bhagat Singh and his comrades strove hard to build a national consciousness by destroying religious and caste prejudices. Bhagat Singh and his very well mentioned article written by Lala, Ghazal newspaper, in which he has said the time of prayers has gone away. Now the time of raise the sword that has arrived. We not require the Purohits and the Kajis anymore. In the absence of economic equality, aspiration for any kind of brotherhoodness would be an hypocrisy. An hypocrisy. Without economic equality, aspiration for any kind of brotherhood would be an hypocrisy. There can be no brotherhood between the human beings, between the Hindustanis, unless there is a democracy, there is a economic democracy, economic equality, social equality. No casteism. If a caste, I mean the gap, caste means gap, a gap between the rich and poor continues, the wish to have peace in the society would have been no meaning. It's a dream. There can be no peace unless there is a gap between rich and poor. There will be constant struggle between the rich and poor. Bhagat Singh survived only 24 years, round about 24 years, not completed 24 years. Basically, he was a action oriented, thoughtful personality. But by by his articles written in newspapers, in Ganeshankan Vidyarthi, his statement in the court during the trial, and the letters written from the jail, one might imagine the depth and serious studies of Bhagat Singh. Such a serious studies. In Indian society, he started in Lahore High Court that revolution is law of nature. He stated in Lahore Court that revolution is the law of nature. It is a secret of human progress. Revolution is a secret of human progress, but armed bloodshed is not compulsory for it. Try to understand these words. Armed bloodshed is not compulsory for it, for the change. Personal revenge should not have any place in it. It is not an affair of pistol and bombs. In the joint statement with Butkeshwar Dutt, he clearly said that he attributed great sanctity to human life. We are not like mercenary soldiers of imperial army. Those are properly trained by anybody without any repentance. We always respect the human life as much as possible, strive to save it. Bhagat Singh had no illusion that bombs might procreate revolution. The use of bomb had been a symbol of his resentment against British imperialism. That is a symbol of resentment, British imperialism. He declared that his fight is not only against British imperialism, but also against the world imperialism. By this stupendous studies and analytical power, he extricated himself from the mystical religious prejudices. Try to understand these words. Bhagat Singh had been among the first people who advocated secularism as a political policy. Secularism as a political policy. Bhagat Singh had been a great self-critic in letter of jail that he functioned as a terrorist, but actually he had never been a terrorist in his convictions. He further said that I am a revolutionary, I have a scientific thought, protected program, and he had a firm belief that revolutionary might have attained their goal through terrorist methods. Listen again, that revolutionaries might not attain their goals through terrorist methods. He should say the sword of revolution might be sharpened only by the power of thoughts. Self-criticism, free thinking are the most essential qualities of a revolutionary. Prediction of Bhagat Singh proved quite true that British imperialism might have Bhagat Singh would grow more dangerous than he alive. He said that I will be more dangerous after my martyrdom. He further said his touch to the glow for death, aroma of his revolutionary thought would spread all around the slave but glorious, beautiful country. Aroma of his revolutionary thoughts and the actions also as well. It would intoxicated by the youth. They would emerge crazy for the freedom struggle for the nation. In 1942, the prediction came very much true when the millions youth participated in Quit India movement in 1942 with utmost revolutionary fervor. They confronted British police and the army with uttermost courage, by which the pages of history are read with blood. 1942 movement shook the foundation of British Raj. So Subhash Bose said once, Bhagat Singh had become the symbol of new awakening among the youths. Nehru said, acknowledged that Bhagat Singh's popularity was leading to a new national awakening, says that he was a clean fighter who faced the enemy in the open field. He was like a spark that became a flame in short time, spread from the end to country to the other, dispelling prevailing darkness everywhere. It was the words of Pandit Nehru. 4 years after Bhagat Singh hanging, the Director of Intelligence Bureau, Sir Horace Will Williamson. He was the director of Intelligence Bureau of British Empire in India. His photograph was seen in every city, township for a time, revealed popularity, even that even that of Mahatma Gandhi himself. His popularity just outrages Mahatma Gandhi's popularity. He superseded Mahatma Gandhi in those days in the popularity in post-1947 period. Impact of Bhagat Singh in thought on his Indian socialist and communist movement has been tremendous. The left movement always mentioned fulfilling the dreams of Bhagat Singh in respect and complete social or economic freedom. In political free India, the gap between rich and poor is increasing day by day. Half of, half of the Indian population is still groaning under wretched poverty. Everyone knows it. It's an open secret. The rate of unemployment is highest in Asia. It's still very much high among the youth of India. Apart from all economic development, terrorism emerged as a dangerous threat to the integrity of this nation. In this respect, ideas and the ideals both of Sardar Bhagat Singh are very much relevant today. The height of patriotic socialist thoughts Bhagat Singh might generate a new positive direction among the young generation of India. Thank you very much to listen my video. Jai Hind, Jai Bharat, Inqilab Zindabad.